Basically, that's what we're doing. The name of this one on Twitch is Dragon Breath Training Arc, and that is sort of a thing we're gonna do today. You know, the bigger actionable item for today is just getting into the mid game of our status-based incantation playthrough, which means actually using status incantations. Crazy! What a concept. Wild, I know. Stop this guy, he's wild and crazy. And that's what we need to do. And to do that, we have to do something else that isn't about a status incantation that makes me a little sad, which is stop using Dragonclaw. So for the beginning of the stream, look, this is gonna be fine. We're just gonna relax. It's like an early game checkpoint. We're at peace. We're feeling calm, relaxed, fulfilled as people in life. We both are. Nope, you are too. And we're just gonna calmly delete Dragonclaw from the game, and then we're gonna keep going, and it's gonna be fine, and it's gonna be great. And you're just gonna push your feeling. We're just gonna push our feelings down, and that's what's gonna happen. Let me tell people we're here, and yeah, we're just gonna take it nice and easy today. We're gonna relax. It's gonna be completely fine. You're gonna know shortly why I'm focusing my energies to be calm today, because without the overpoweredness of Dragonclaw, this build is garbage and we're going to die a lot. And so I'm getting my like, sanity right. No, it's not really, but we are going to be weaker for a little while I adapt to like actually using status incantations instead of just spamming Dragonclaw. So chillax time is the needed tag. Asymptomatic, welcome back. Morbin time. What's Morbin? I've heard that it's Morbin time, and then he morbed all over the enemies, but I don't know what it actually means. And it's one of those things where it's like, I should probably know what that means. Biotic Me, welcome back. Rainmaker, welcome back. We ride. We do. We're gonna ride at a leisurely pace today. And for a leisurely pace, you need to have a leisurely drink. That's how that works. That's how that's done. Yeah. Here I have a chilled, nice and condensation because it's 75% humidity in here. Holy shit. That's real. A nice chilled glass from the freezer. And we have a basic light lager, a Modelo Especial. I hope I'm pronouncing that not totally disgracefully. Modelo is a macro brewer that, like, you know, Coors and Budweiser and a bunch of these, they have a very, very light offering. They're often literally called light beer or something that I don't think tastes like anything or tastes kind of bad. But something I discovered recently that I think is really interesting that I feel like a lot of other people already knew, but I didn't know this. It was exciting. Is that these brands of beer generally make what is sometimes referred to as like a legacy version of their beer that is like, it's the same style of beer, not to be blunt, but like they just tried a lot harder to make it actually taste good. And whereas, for example, Coors Light is one of my least favorite things in the world, let alone beer, Coors also makes something called Coors Banquet, which is like basically the same style of beer as far as I'm concerned anyway. It might not technically be, but you know, it's the same idea, but just like much more, you know, bodied. It's a light style of lager, so it's not like a super heavy beer. It's still the same kind of beer, but it has some crispness and clarity of flavor, and it has some flavor notes, you know, other than like my urine after a night of drinking too much, which is what Coors Light tastes like. Well, how would I know? And this is the same thing. So Modelo has, I don't think I've ever had the like not Especial Modelo, but this is like the nice one, basically. It's still not the fanciest. These are really cheap still, but they're like not the extremely basic, you know, I'm just personally not a fan of those. There's nothing wrong with them if you like them, but I don't. This is something different. And I like this one. This is a popular beer from Mexico. I also have Miller High Life is one of the other ones I was trying. Again, normal Miller Lite, not a fan. But that version, it's surprisingly a lot better to me anyway. So cheers. Today we will partake of one. And I actually can't fit all of it into this glass because it will foam. And I'm okay with losing some fizz. Yes, I know people normally pull it sideways, and I personally don't prefer to do that in this case. I'm fine with losing a little bit of carbonation here to air it out a bit. But it's not all going to fit because this glass is the size of a can, but it's going to foam up. So, cheers. We're going to relax and delete Dragonclaw today. Should we talk about why? Why don't you tell me what you think I'm doing by saying we're going to stop using Dragonclaw? I feel like it's obvious, and I want to know what other people think I'm thinking about that. Because it's one of those things where it's like, if I was watching this stream, I would want me to stop using it. But I would respect that the person doing this stream, maybe like that's just what they want to do and they're trying to have fun or whatever. But I, as a creator, as well as like players Andy, gamers Andy, I guess, and then there's like YouTube creators Andy over here, are in complete agreement that like take this behind the shed, get out the Glock, like we're done. It's too good is basically the long and the short of it. But I was curious if other people have felt that way too, because a lot of people showing up in chat early here have been following along with the stream. Ragnavar, welcome back. Manifesting Inner Peace live on stream, no less, indeed. With beer, even. It's crazy. Most of the beer fits. Yeah. Yeah. Every drop of goodness. Now that's a handsome looking beer. Yeah. I have here a modicum of saline solution to put in the beer if I decide I want that. Sometimes I enjoy that. With this beer, I mostly don't, but I like salt in my beer. I like a pickle in my beer sometimes. That can be nice, this style of beer anyway. Tasting notes for Modelo Especial tasting. Are we doing that? I guess. Clove. Thank you, asymptomatic. There's not a lot to say, it's still a light style of beer. It's not full of hops on purpose, but there is a little tickle of bitterness. I've heard Modelo Especial described as a tangy bitterness. Interesting. Yeah, it's like a little bit of citrusy hops is what it tastes like to me, but a subtle enough amount that it doesn't really read as being bitter, and yet there's enough that it does taste very slightly like there was a little bit of lime in there or something, which very nice. I mean, if you actually had a little bit of lime, I like that. Crisp, not sweet or dry to my palate. It's like in the middle. Very corny, I guess. And I believe there is actually a good amount of corn in the mash bill. Is that what it's called for this? But it tastes a little tiny bit like corn in a good way. If you're familiar with like American style whiskey, I feel like there's a tiny bit of that type of flavor going on in here, like Maker's Mark, sort of. A little bit of that. If you like that, you might like this. But yeah, I mean, it's light, refreshing, crispy, kind of medium, not too sweet, not too dry, some body. Yeah, savory. And then with that slight, not acidic, but like citrusy twang. Really nice. Yeah. Tasty, but not a lot to say. Just if you like that style of beer, the like light lager macro brewery thing, the good or like legacy version of a lot of them is very nice. Like that's great. Ooh. And medium carbonation. I love carbonation, so I could use more. One of the reasons I like Miller High Life is because it's more carbonated. Really carbonated. Okay. Right, Dragonclaw. Green Jester said, first of all, is this for PvP? I'm an arena freak and Dragonclaw blows there. In my opinion, Dragonclaw has similar area coverage to the Frenzied Flame Burst and a similar verticality, but much slower. Yeah, that's interesting. So comparing, I definitely think Dragonclaw is crazy strong in the context of this build, but I understand what you mean. Like, there's a way in which it's like, is this like really that much better than other options? The movement when you use Dragonclaw, let's start using it. because we're not going to use it again on these streams, according to me, so we might as well just use it now. The like swing that you get, and you get some super armor while doing it, is very useful sometimes. Getting 2 hits with it and the second one comes out a bit faster is helpful. I can definitely see that being very punishable in PvP. I haven't done like almost any PvP, so I don't really know, but I could see that being bad. I think in PvE it's pretty cracked. It does amazing poise damage. It does really good damage output. The requirements are pretty low. Again, there's some super armor, so you often will land it even if the enemy does something to interrupt you. Someone to demonstrate. There's a good gap closeriness that I could see being bad against human opponents, but is kind of ridiculous against NPCs a lot of the time. There's a good thing where you can like back away but then swivel with it that can be useful sometimes instead of needing the like moving forward slowly. I think the other big thing is that when a human player sees you do this, they can use the time of the animation to plan around what to do to punish you in a way that the AI just like doesn't do, and it wouldn't be that reasonable to do. A really interesting topic we could get into more today is like the differences between fighting against a human and a good computer opponent, but that I don't really know how to say, like, feels like a computer opponent, I guess, right? There's a certain vibe or activity to gaming the system a little bit and not having it be that it's like about fighting a real human, I guess. So just as a topical example, in Hollow Knight, a lot of the enemies in Hollow Knight, and I would assume in Silksong, are not programmed to react to you that much. They're kind of like fighting an amusement park ride. They do their thing, and you have to avoid and adapt to the thing they're doing enough to get in damage without taking too much damage, or too frequently, basically, before you heal. And it's a different activity than fighting a reactive opponent. Now, games like Elden Ring are a little weird here, of course, because they are about fighting a reactive opponent to an extent, even the NPCs. The NPCs will wait for you to, like, flask or something, right? And will try to punish you that way. They're programmed to do that. But I would argue it's still a different appeal activity to fighting human opponents. It's a related, maybe more related activity, but I'm not sure I agree that it would be just better for NPCs to react even more humanly, in particular tactical ways, to every single ability you use, for example. That would be cool. You could build a game around that would be cool, but I feel like it would be a thing that is appealing for a different reason than having it be that you pretty much know the NPC's behavior completely, if that makes sense. Do you see what I mean? There's something that's kind of different about that. I do think you're right overall, Green Jester, that the crux of Dragonclaw being good has to do with that NPC-ness rather than NPP-ness. Take me out to dinner first, that enemies have in this game. And therefore, not having played a lot of PvP, it's kind of easy for me to imagine how a lot of the advantages of Dragonclaw would not be that good in PvP. And in fact, it's absolutely insane in PvE most of the time, and often takes a completely unacceptably small investment, as well as another part of why it's so useful. But I can see it being surprisingly bad in like the right or the wrong situation. Anyway, yeah, I mean, the main reason people didn't get into it, so it's fine. Obviously, the main reason is it's just ridiculous, and it's very favored by the type of setup that gives you status incantations. You're building a good amount of faith, you're using the Dragon Communion Seal, because it's the only thing that lets you scale status output of incantations, but it happens that that setup heavily favors Dragonclaw, which doesn't do status and doesn't have anything to do with this build's concept or themes, but is just really good. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing this. You know, if you were to play this build and you wanted it to just be good, yeah, absolutely use this incantation, right? Of course. But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm playing this because I want to experience the status incantations, and I have seen that this is in the way of that, and so it must be gone. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Frenzied Burst, for example, is like fine. In the first place, there are no status incantations to my knowledge anyway. And no, this doesn't count against in PvE anyway. This basically doesn't do status. There are no status incantations I'm aware of anyway that do damage at this range at all. So when I would use this, it's not preventing me from using a status incantation I would have enjoyed at that range. I'm also not the kind of player to I'm kind of an honest player. If you've watched a good amount of my build videos and streams, I often don't lean into exploiting things that much. This is just personal preference. Is like that's fine. Great, really. And the thing about gaming, but it's just not something I tend to do currently. So what I mean is I'm not going to just snipe everything because the status incantations are bad, which they're like not anyway, right? But let's just say I was having trouble landing them. I'm not the kind of player to lean into this that much. The thing is that unlike Dragonclaw, this is super vulnerable and then like a niche tool, whereas Dragonclaw sort of unga bungas everything and is also a close range attack. So there's a way in which when you don't know what to do, you're going to lean on this, but when you don't know what to do, you're not necessarily going to be able to lean on this. I mean, you could try to run really far away from enemies and then snipe them. Do you see the difference though? So I'm banning Dragonclaw for myself. It's very good in a build like this, but that's not why I'm making this build. I don't care as much how good it is. I know it will be able to complete the game. I just want to see what that experience will be like, so off it goes. Likewise, this is the perfect time to have a free spell slot because we got to get more spells. So a little to do after that longer chill intro segment. I want to get Grail's Roar today. This is really good for this build. This is a good ability in general, but it does not have the Dragonclaw problem, even though it is not a status incantation, in my opinion, because it is a pretty vulnerable thing to use, and I feel like this isn't actually that good that much of the time. It takes multiple spell slots as well. I have used this before, and I know I will not lean into it the way I was leaning into Dragonclaw, so I think it's fine. Certainly if you were interested in Dragon Communion incantations, I don't know, anything like tangentially related to this build, this is really good. Let's see the blurb, I guess. Superior incantation of the Dragon Communion. Yes. A gentleman's ability. Channels the power of Grail the Elder Dragon. An incantation of legendary status. This is what we got from killing that dragon that didn't move at all, that you don't have to fight, that doesn't move. An incantation of legendary status. It transforms the caster into a dragon to emit a terrible roar. It's terrible. Reducing the attack power and defense of nearby enemies, Grail was the mother of all dragons, dwarfing all who stood before her like a looming mountain. And she also used the fighting tactics of a looming mountain. It does a lot of damage. It doesn't really say, like, the roar is not just like a debuff roar. It does good damage and like kind of okay stagger in my memory as well. This is a pretty weird ability. The startup is kind of but overall it's pretty cool. And then, yeah, like a debuff, which is pretty unique. So, yeah, that's, we're gonna go, we need to go get a Dragon Heart to be able to buy that. It takes 3, I think. We need to fix that problem. I did that in a scripted way to show you the issue that we're having. We need to make it so I can actually hit with these attacks, which we kind of have with Endure, which we'll use right now. Thank you so much for helping me with this example. Thank you. Thank you for doing that for me. Thank you so much, man. Thank you. Just a wonderful guy. Thank you so much. Good. By using Endure, I need to use that more consistently. And then, yeah, we'll respec, and there's a talisman pouch we can get at Ania because we killed 2 rune piece holders, shard holders. I'm getting confused because in Elden Ring, I think they are called shard bearers, but I'm also reading Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, and Brando Sando's, easy for me to say, Stormlight Archive, and that also has shard bearers, but there's something completely different. And that is frying my brain a little bit. Is that what Elden Ring calls them? Shard bearers? Like Shard of the Elden Ring bearers? If you've read the Stormlight Archive, shard bearer there is like you have a shard blade or a shard plate, or both. Anyway, that has been frying my brain, and so I never know what to call like the rune holders, the shard bearers. That just feels wrong to me somehow in Elden Ring, but bearers of shards of the Elden Ring. It makes total sense, right? It's just me specifically. I'm just an idiot, and it's confusing me. So that's the plan for today. Did you get all that? No? Good talk. Let's get started. Still utterly relaxed, practically asleep, basically not even conscious. Tastes like clove. Oh, thank you, asymptomatic. Earlier I asked about what morbing is. Morbing means morbing, of course. To morb is a verb, noun, and lifestyle. I love the grammatical element, lifestyle. You've got verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and then also lifestyles, which are different from all of those other things. That's one of my favorite ones. Parts of speech. I love those. You know, the English major mostly studied so I could study lifestyles, I would say. Creative writing, it's good, but it just doesn't have enough lifestyles. So it would be good if if we could add some more of those in. Okay, low-hanging fruit first. Let's go to the round table hold and get that talisman slot, shall we? I think we shall. Glorious. So Ania had previously tasked us to get 2 shards of the Elden Ring, and then we would be admitted to Leyndell, and we've got them. She's going to be like, you suck, but you did better than a lot of other people have. The fingers are not doing their thing yet, where they commune with the sky. People who know the lore, I do know the actual lore, but it's not relevant at all, and don't try to tell me otherwise. And here we are, 3rd talisman slot, good. So a couple of goals for respeccing, which will happen soon. I want high dexterity. This gives me 30, or is it 40, virtual dexterity for spellcasting speed. Dexterity affects spellcasting speed. The cap for that is 70. So I want 30 or 40 dexterity, I'll double check which. Along with this to max spellcasting speed, or I might not max it. If it's 40, I feel like just 30 dexterity is not a very big ask. But a lot of these incantations are really long. To some extent, we're going to have to see if the spellcasting speed actually affects them enough, because spellcasting speed is a little weird in this game. There are parts of the full animation of doing an incantation that are not all like the spellcasting time. Some of them are just like the effect going off, and I don't believe this speeds up those parts. So the benefit of this is a little inconsistent depending on the spell, or I guess just unintuitive. But overall, I believe it's something that this build wants pretty badly, because most of the things that this build is using are vulnerable as all hell. We have Endure, sure, but I don't want to have to face tank damage every single time I want to cast anything. And if you've been watching the past 3 or 4 episodes, you do need to do that if you don't use this, or if you don't have a lot of spellcasting speed. I don't know, maybe I just suck, but I will definitely be using it a lot. We also have like no talismans. Now I'll just slap this on for now. I picked this up a few sessions ago so that we had some kind of generalist option to smooth things over in the mid game. But realistically, you can get something better for this build. And this is kind of a crutch too. Like, it's helpful for now, but this is going to fall off a little bit pretty soon. We don't desperately need it's 5 faith. It gives you 5 faith that badly. For now, it's nice, and I want 1 more point of faith to be able to cast Grail's Roar, so let's actually get that now. How much more do I need? Only like 5,000? We probably have that. Godric the Grafted stuff. I don't think I'm going to use the Dragon Fist, and I could always copy this. Yeah, let's boof it. Let's eat it. Feed me. Nom 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 nom. This is a little silly, of course, because we're just going to respec in a second anyway, but as you can see, without Godric's Rune active and the Two Fingers Talisman, our faith is actually pretty low. So a lot of the early game is going to be this should probably be higher than 18 for a build that is only spellcasting. Seems like that would be beneficial. I'm also gonna bump up Mind, mostly so I'm not carrying around all these runes. Again, it doesn't matter that much right now, but I would level up anyway, so it's fine. Think that's enough. Quick little transaction. Boop. Perfect. Look at that. Nailed it. Cool. We got that. Let's take a look. Get talisman slot for mania. Equip Radigan icon. Yep. We need to go get a mimic tier to be able to respec. So let's talk about that for a moment from software. What the hell is what we're going to talk about. The mimic tier situation, it's as follows. It's very simple, folks. You simply need to find these completely unmarked NPCs that you would never ever find in a million years, and by finding them, you will get a mimic tier. Now, it's sort of like weird and bizarrely elegant in a way, because if you're the kind of player who'd want to respec a lot of times, then you looked a bunch of stuff up, right? So it's fine. You could just look up the enemies that have the mimic tier, and it's cool. It's fine, right? Like, yeah, I guess. Sort of, but like, why are they so hidden? What are you doing, modern game design? Like, I understand that players can just look stuff up. I do understand that, but it's like, why? Like, what is the deal with making these things so hard to find? Now, it's not that big a deal that they restrict how many times you can respec, because you can just play New Game Plus and get more mimic tiers. And I feel like the amount of these available in the base game is actually really good overall. Like, it's not, there's, I think, 18 or so. It's a lot. There's a good amount. Okay. That takes so long to cast that you have to take it alone first. Just barely got that off. As you can see, though I do have a weapon that's unupgraded as a sort of placeholder right now, you can see how this build basically can't do anything if it can't find a way to get its spells not to be interrupted, except like abuse terrain or whatever. Trick about fighting these is to not try to back up from them, is something I learned early, but mostly poison is just carrying us this fight. There we go. That was good. That was good. All right. Thank you. Now, of course, there are answers to my query about how you're supposed to find larval tiers, they're called, sorry. Bionic Mew said, all the mimic tier enemies have some aspect of being a bit oddly placed or standing out in some way. Also, if your human pattern recognition is working just a little bit too hard, maybe. Yeah, right, you might notice them. They're not indicated in no way. I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm just making the point that I feel like there's a broader question here, which is, but there's no reason to not make them readily available. Like, if it's a game where you'd want to respec, why have them be so hidden? Again, there's an elegance that I hate, but it is an elegance in my opinion, where if you're the kind of player who'd want to make a bunch of different builds, you almost certainly did look up stuff in 2025, and so therefore you looked up where the larval tiers are, and therefore it's fine, I guess. You know, on the plus side, like with many things in Elden Ring, if you are willing to just look it up, it's actually easy to find them. A lot of them are just in the open, and you can run to their location and just get your mimic tier and move on with your life. So yeah, you know, I sort of feel like that's basically just Elden Ring is a big game. And so if there is something that solves your problem and you know everything that is in the entire game, you are pretty likely to be able to hand wave your problem because the thing you need will exist, you know. I feel like that's not actually that good of an argument in the game's defense. That just like, okay, you know, the game is large and therefore there might be what you're looking for. So yeah, I don't know. Not the biggest fan of that, but it doesn't really matter either. The range is so good. Just trying to get used to using the breath spells a little bit. But yeah, just to say, I just don't think it adds much for them to be so obscure. That's all I'm not really even complaining about, but it's just like, there are a lot of them. Again, there's like a good, more than a dozen. So to give you an idea of how often you can respec, because I know some of you are kind of vicariously playing this game through me, the answer is a good amount of times. And I don't feel like there are actually that many stat archetypes, if you like, in this game. Different combinations of ways you would want to respec your stats to create meaningfully different builds. So you could say that it doesn't really matter, because are you really going to want to change your stats that many times? Like, I guess. And then if you roll over to New Game Plus, you can get the Mimic Tiers again. So you can respec a lot of times. It's not the worst way these systems could be. I feel like the broader question for me is not at all that this one is like so bad or whatever, but again, is more that broad, like, but why are you trying to get the player to not respec so much, I guess? And I think that the answer is, in principle, that our society believes that if people stick to their choices, they will generally enjoy them more. I think that's probably true for many players, that if they have the temptation to respec every single time they hit a roadblock, they will have less fun if they do that. The thing that bothers me is a petty thing, I think, but I do think it matters, and it is that is at odds with designing the game for people that will not ruin their experience of it. I would like a solution where we have our cake and eat it too, where the game is full of build options. The game is significantly about making different builds and trying out different stuff, and that's a fun thing to do. I want to let the player respec without tempting the player to respec, and I believe that you can do both of these things without much fuss by letting the player respec more readily, but just giving it some increased cost. For example, I've seen an interesting system where you can just pay money to respec, but the amount of money that you have to pay accelerates each time, like multiplies. There's an exponential growth curve to the amount you need to pay to respec, up to a cap. And so respecing wastefully, I guess, or reactively over and over again, obsessively, for every boss fight, doesn't actually make sense if the game is designed reasonably, and the game doesn't reward that behavior. But if you're the kind of player who wants to respec all the time and you gear up for that, the game doesn't actually prevent you from doing that. And the other thing is, it doesn't hide the ability to respec. It tells you that is here. We're just saying we don't think that that's the best solution for you. Give it a try with the build you have. Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with that. But I feel like a lot of game designers have gone way too far to avoid the player being able to respec, because they're worried that if the player respecs a lot, they'll have a bad time. And I don't think that that's worth it. I think there's a common ground where we can say respecing is good until proven bad. It's just proven bad in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So we should include respecing and make the player aware it's there. Our primary goal is to discourage excessive respecing, but to encourage respecing, because it's fun and good and a thing that the game rewards. Again, the game that is the apotheosis of this for me is Cyberpunk 2077, a game where, at least at the time I played it, this might have changed, and my partner actually just started this game, so I'm excited to see if it's changed, but it probably hasn't. I don't know. I hope it has. The entire fantasy is the ability to take your arms off and replace them with stronger arms, but you can't respec. You can respec your traits, your stat points, like once per account was how it worked when I played. And that was years after it came out, by the way. I'm not just saying I played like during beta and they didn't add this in yet. But I don't know, they might have changed it. And the entire fantasy of the whole world is that you can respec. Does that not seem odd? There's obvious reasons why they don't want you to respec. There are parts of the world where like you can open this door, you can pry this door open if you have enough body, or like whatever the strength stat is called in Cyberpunk. And they don't want you to see that, go, and then go run and respec and then pry the door open. I get it. But do you see where I'm coming from as well? That isn't a good enough reason to literally forbid respecing in the entire game, when the entire game is designed around respecing to an extent. There's got to be some middle ground here. Surely it's not weird to suggest that there should be some middle ground where we don't encourage the player to respec past every obstacle, but we also don't like literally make it impossible to use most of the stuff in the game just because we're worried about that phenomenon. I mean, again, not to put too fine a point on it, but like there are some players who just won't do that. So surely a way to kind of have Arcade Needed to would be good, and therefore it feels worth exploring. Now, don't get me wrong, not every game wants to be about respeccing. They don't, sure. Asymptomatic, you said, I perceive some amount of meaning or weight from not being able to respec. Something like Path of Exile 1 lets the player redo their skill forest, but the character's body type and ascensions are locked in. Nothing for the duelist to do if they wanted to become a witch. Thank you for buying another character slot. Sure. Fact aside that you've put a point on the fact that there is another incentive for not letting the player do that, but we'll put that aside for now. Don't want to do too much of a low blow here. Right. I'm with you that there is a meaning or a weight to not being able to respec over and over again. I guess I just feel like a lot of games that are going for that effect, it's sort of like there's a conflict where the game is all about encouraging you to be excited about all these different choices, but then at the same time, the game will not let you actually play with all of those choices. Or the game is about making impactful choices about your character, and therefore, will let you shift them from time to time because the game is giving you a ton of rewards. The game is asking you to commit to building more vigor or more dexterity or whatever in any given moment. But there are some weapons you won't be able to use when you encounter them. And I guess I just feel like my broader critique is that games don't seem to me to be considering which one they are, not that it's bad for one or the other to exist. Obviously, being that I have an entire career built around doing this, I'm gonna say that I prefer games that let you respec a lot, sure. And I would argue a little bit more strongly in favor of the game letting you respec freely, because people have limited time. You can't just say, like, play the game again and then you can try new items. Like, but you know that people just can't, though. That's a very hand-wavy thing to say in 2025. Like, you know that people don't have time to play your 100-hour RPG again, so it's kind of silly to say, oh, like, that's for your next playthrough. There are many items in Baldur's Gate 3, for example, though I love Baldur's Gate 3's respecking, but anyway, just as an example, where to get value out of this item, you feasibly need to plan a whole playthrough around it, but you only get it in Act 3, and if you don't beeline it in Act 3, you probably get it at the end of Act 3. So it would be a build around, but you don't get it until the game is most of the way over. In a game that really provokes constant respecking, or like many parallel builds, maybe. There are games like that. Yeah, I could see that maybe working, but in context, I think it's a little odd. I sort of enjoy having the finale of Baldur's Gate 3 be the character I have settled on over potentially a lot of futzing around. It's me. But that doesn't mean that infinite respecking isn't like annoying. I don't know, like it would still make more sense to think about how that item would be used. Likewise, Green Jester. While I was describing this, you said, I love having limited respecs per new game. And when I said it's because they don't want people to feel like they have to respec past every challenge, you said yes. It seems like you were relating to that. From that perspective, I feel like if you want the character to feel tied to that playthrough, I feel like going a little further to not let the player respec this much would be good. Even more than that, having a system where you kind of remember, you have a lingering sense of abilities that you had before when you respec seems like a better way to allow a little bit of respecking, but still give the game its own like feeling of you playing a coherent character. My point with all of that is just to say that when you have a game like Cyberpunk 2077 built around you ripping your arms off and replacing them with something new, I just like, it doesn't really make sense for that game to also choose to be a game where you can't respec at all. That just, it's not the end of the world, but that has a lot of anti-synergy with the design. The game is built around you trying new things, but you just can't, basically. In Elden Ring, I feel like this game is open-ended enough that you could argue many ways. And I'm not trying to say that anyone else's preference is wrong about that. But there are design decisions in these games that support one thing or the other, and my feeling less is that I disagree with how the game was made, and is more that I don't think the people who made these games thought about which one of those things it is. The people who made Cyberpunk, I feel like just said, oh, well, the thing you do is you restrict respecking, so we will do it. And it's like, okay, but is this a game where that actually makes sense? Like, or is that just sort of an industry norm and you didn't think about it that much? I don't know. Maybe they feel like they have a really good reason. I don't know. I'm not trying to be facetious about that. but I don't think a lot of games have considered this very carefully. Yeah, and I also feel like there are times where you can see how, like in Elden Ring, let's say, multiple would be good. I would kind of like something like a game mode that let you pick, this run through, my character can't respec that much, or there's more and more of a cost to respecing. But then this account, this save file, I want to do PvP or something. Green Gesture said, okay, my respec grief is entirely because I don't want a new save to do something in the arena. Right, like you just want to play around with builds, and the game does heavily encourage that, so it's not weird that you want that. It kind of feels like it would be better to have the game allow a bit of both. And again, you could say that hiding these obscure respec enemies is a good way to do it. I just personally think an even better way to do it would be to think about a game design way to incentivize people to think about the game that way. Or when you play PvP, you can respec as much as you want, or something like that. I don't know. That as an example. You get the respec item as a reward for defeating the thing rather than before you go do a thing. Because as it stands, if you know that respeccing exists in the game, and you probably do, you kill Renala and then the rune says you can respec, you might go, okay, well, I'm stuck on this challenge. None of the larval tiers are behind bosses or anything. Well, maybe one or two of them are. There's the mimic tier fight where I think you get larval tiers, but most of them are not behind any specific boss. So if you know respeccing exists, you absolutely can just respec to trivialize the fight or whatever. What if instead you got the larval tiers for beating what the game considers to be its hardest challenges? That sounds kind of cool to me. You're trying to give the player a clear message where you say, it's not about you needing to have the right build to beat this boss. You can do a little of that if you want to, but we want you to feel like it's valid and intended to be fun to play the game with the build you have. And so as a reward, you beat this boss. Now you get more variety if you want it. You kind of showed some mastery over that build you have. Maybe you want to try something else. And then if the player doesn't, they're feeling good. Well, they just won. The game isn't telling them to respec. It's just saying, hey, one of the things we'll let you do now is respec, but in a way that doesn't encourage respecing to bypass the challenge. This is my pitch. I don't think it's that weird. That's what I have to say. Okay, let's go enough arcane to cast that spell, and then I kind of want to have enough faith to cast the stuff we have without adding more. Then we're going to do a good amount of mind, just where we were with mind. I think we can safely dump endurance, and if that comes back to bite me, you can laugh at me. And then basically the rest in vigor. No strength, no dex, just 0, or 10, but no points in strength, dex, or endurance, and none in intelligence. We dump 4 stats like a mouse, and we go with this. What do we think? Let me just double check for my sanity that you can cast Grail's Roar with this stat spread. Again, we do have access to Godric's rune, but I don't want to have to rely on that too much. It is indeed 1728. Yep. Looks right to me. And then, yeah, we can invest in vigor for a little while and then keep pumping faith to the point where we can take off that 1000. But now that we've gotten past the early game, we have access to, and the damage to acquire, some good, mid-game faith and status incantation specifically spells. We're going to hit a point where this is kind of enough. Mr. Foot, you had a really good quote from last stream that this is kind of enough damage to do a lot of the game. So for a little while, we're just going to end up pumping vigor and mind, and then eventually get back to there are some big faith spells that would be nice to have. But I think I'm going to do this for now. Binopy, you said endurance is such a, well, not low priority, but rather late priority stat in Elden Ring. Sure, it's a very, I really like endurance and mind in this game, especially endurance, because it's a very use it if you need it kind of stat. If you are running out of endurance, you ought to build endurance, but it's very resistant to the feeling like there is a correct amount of endurance to build. And indeed, interestingly, mathematically, endurance has a lot of soft caps. I wonder why they did that. Could it maybe be for this reason? I don't know. a lot of stats, there's like two-ish values, like 40 and 60, or like, 20, kind of 25 if you two-hand, 38, and then like 60 or something for these. Anyway, like that, where you start getting less per point. Endurance, for whatever reason, has like 5 such breakpoints, and the result is that it doesn't feel like it meaningfully has breakpoints as much as other stats. Just kind of steadily you get less of a return on your investment per point, rather than it being like at a specific time that kicks in more. And the result is that it feels like you just kind of add what you think you'll use. Like if we can get away with 10, I feel like this build really wants to get away with 10. But there are some Dragon Breath spells where I recall that you need enough to be able to breathe multiple times. In fact, let's just look that up for a second, because that's kind of relevant to this build. So for example, like Rotten Breath. Maybe I'm wrong and this actually doesn't take stamina cost 48. Yes. Okay, so you can see that if it costs 48 stamina with 96 max stamina at base, I can just barely do like both breaths, or I don't remember whether this has multiple casts, but I think it does. Same thing with the FP cost. It's 104 FP for a full cast, so you need almost full FP with my current build, which we should definitely build more mind. But you can see we can get away with less endurance. There are some like small amounts where you'd want a little more, and this is a place where I would really appreciate the game just putting up a little indicator. Nope. Go back. Okay. I would really appreciate the game showing you how much these things cost, but you get the idea. It's manageable. Some of them will have a cost such that you need to have a little more stamina than you have built for it to even be possible to cast the full version of the spell. But yeah, we should be fine now. Again, if there was something that it doesn't say, right? It says FP cost at the top for the breath, but then it doesn't say stamina cost. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on, but I think we can mostly get away with it. Again, at the very least, it will be like not that much stamina. We can afford to build not that much endurance. Pretty straightforward. Okay, great. Good. Let's see what else. There are a number of little side activities that would benefit the build a lot that I feel like are worth going to get. One of them is getting some buffs. We currently don't really have any significant incantation just buffing spells, and there are some very good ones that have very little opportunity cost for this build, so it feels worth exploring them. The big ones are Blessing's Boon and Golden Vow, and we can get access to both pretty easily. Blessing's Boon is just here. This is just health regen. Good amount of health regen. There will be a better version later in the game, but we don't have enough faith anyway. And then Golden Vow, we need to get to Altus Plateau, but we can easily get that squared away now. And then it's just hop, skip, and a jump away. That's 4,000, and we have 1,007. Yeah, so not happening anytime soon. Let's go get the Dectus Medallion and go up that way. Do I have any pieces of that? Did I save both? I'm the kind of person who would save both to do in one go, and it looks like I did. So let's go do that. So the Dectus Medallion pieces are here. And my brain is trying to call up the location of the other one. Is it here? I want to say it's around here. We'll find out if that's correct. But it's something like that. Ooh, that's good as well. Yep, a relevant talisman for damage would be nice. Green Jester said somewhere in Limgrave is a roar talisman that I think works on breath as well. Good idea. I don't know where the roar talisman is, but I think that's a great suggestion that is not currently on my list. Let's take a look. See, it's just a nice relaxed stream today. We're just going to redo the build. We're going to make everything really good. It's going to be fine. Yeah, it says on the wiki that it does affect the Dragon Communion incantation breath attacks, and something like Grail's Roar is affected as well. Yes, in the Limgrave Tunnels, which is here, I think. And while we do that, great, something to get comfy with. We'll catch back up on chat. Number 3 is the one I want. 1 and 2 are for the Dectus medallion pieces later. We gon' consult all our notes, dot our T's, and cross our I's. Yeehaw, brother. Yeehaw. Asymptomatic, you said, not all in the same league, but Final Fantasy X had its skill tree, go with it, have a 4 times efficiency boost when traversing backwards. I could see that being a compromise between completely liquid respecking and bouncing the player from doing so. Interesting, yep. So the idea, Asymptomatic, you're describing, if I understand correctly, is that in Final Fantasy X, if you want to go back to get something that you have passed already, basically, it's much easier to get it. So it takes a sort of, it gives you a sort of feeling of a memory of where your build was or is, and you can change things more easily as long as they're more similar to what you had before. You could design a more fluid version where it's just like, if you retake a thing you have previously respec'd out of, then it's cheaper to get or something like that, but it's harder to respec. And so when you respec, you're actually building on your character in a way, but it still has some kind of cost. That's a cool idea, for sure. I think I lost my Godric's rune, but it's fine because this is a low-level dungeon. That's a very cool idea, yeah. Having it be that the player has some method by which they can keep a record of what they had spec'd to previously, even if they respec, or where the player specking something makes it easy to not respec, but like adapt within that build they made. So if you'd spec'd into stealth or whatever, you can't respec those points maybe, but it's much easier to spec also into something that is near what you already spec'd into, which lets you just like flex around a little bit, stay flexible. That's an interesting idea. Another version, even though I just maligned Cyberpunk 2077, I'm not saying that it's terrible overall. I just think it's weird that you can't respec more in that game. They do something a little bit similar where I forget exactly, but like basically there are trait points in the game. So you'll build, I don't know, you build like, into tech, for example, and you can't respec that you're built into tech, but you can respec what traits in the tech tree you have equipped. And the result is that you have a lot of flexibility within the same archetype. Again, they think that means you can respec as much as is meaningful, and there's no need to let the player respec more. And I just don't agree that the design really supports that. I feel like a lot of cyberware requires little bits of stats that you wouldn't have known you needed, but actually fits your playstyle very well, if only you could equip it. So that's why I think that's not a good solution, but it's not chaos. It's not like they didn't think about it, if that makes sense. I'm just saying that I feel like there would be a lot of benefits to doing it differently. So being able to respec like your talents within a tree, but not your stats, for example, is a way to do this. I can't use any of my weapons because I respect all of my physical stats away because I'm not that smart. And the result is that we don't have any way to fight enemies in melee range. So I'm just fixing that. Don't mind me. Are there any weapons in my inventory that we can equip? No. Except for the club. And we come full circle, back to the club. The only weapon that will save me from myself, my own stupidity. But alas, we don't really need a weapon right now, so it's fine. Let's just go put Endure on this, and everything will be all good. So yeah, just to say, there are definitely a lot of, it's not as if no one has ever thought of making a kind of middle ground. However, the example in Cyberpunk is a great example of where if you said what I said earlier in the stream to the developers of Cyberpunk while they were making the build system, they would say, we don't need to do that because you can respec your traits within your stats. You just can't respec your stats. And I feel that that is a perspective that makes no sense, but is coming from the idea that it's sort of bad to respec. Respecking isn't fun. Spending time in the build system isn't fun. It's only something you would do if you were like futzing around or you're massively obsessed with the most effective approach. And that's just not true. Lots of people have fun doing that. So hiding it is bad, except for the benefits. You don't want the player to respec past every challenge, okay. And I think you can see how the desire to avoid the player being able to respec, it might be from a certain perspective. I'm just trying to add the other perspective, which is, well, it's fun to be able to respec, and restricting the player's ability to do that is inherently bad. But there are some problems with letting the player respec all the time. They might mess up their experience of the game. And so finding some middle ground would be good. I do not think that making the player unable to respec their stats really is finding a middle ground. That's just saying we would like a solution where we don't need to worry about that. And that's okay. But I think the industry would be better if some people cared about making builds. I don't know. Changing builds. Asymptomatic, you said Hades 1 had darkness be a complete refund if spent in the mirror. Find which abilities are worth investing in. No loss for changing your mind. There's one major darkness sink, which I think is a Nyx quest. If the player throws darkness there, they are throwing that form of regression in the garbage. Although I think respecing the mirror might cost the key, which might be in short supply just as well. Darkness being a mild measure of the save file's age is fascinating to me. Yep, letting the player unlock the slots in a build, but then they can respec as much as they want within them is also really interesting to me. Like, you might have a character who you need to do a lot of work to raise your, this is kind of different, but just as an example, you could have a quest in Elden Ring where you raise your strength cap up to 30. You now can have up to 30 strength. And then in this version of the game, you would be able to freely respec strength as much as you want. So yes, in theory, you can go, get all of those things done. But in practice, a lot of players will probably focus on having their stats be unlocked for only certain categories. You could also do something like the player can unlock stats up to a higher cap only in a limited way, but then at the end of the game, they can do it for more stats. For example, the player can uncap 4 different stats, and then when they beat the game, they can try to do the quest to uncap the other 4 as well, but they have some kind of limit. And so within that, they can move their stats around as much as they want. They've kind of gained the ability for those stats. But they can't respec to anything. They can respec as much as they want, but they can't respec to infinite different options, is maybe an interesting option as well. I mean, again, I'm on board with the idea that the player has limitations because I, as a player, just do have fun limiting myself. I just banned Dragonclaw from my own playthrough because I think it will make me have more fun. I don't dislike the idea of the limitations, and in the first place, it doesn't matter even if I did. This is about what's good for game design, not what I like. My point is just that, for me, it's because I'm adding those limitations. I think the point stands that you could conceivably have fun respecing while having limitations on that respecing, as long as the limitation isn't respecing itself. It's just that there are some things you can't do. I think that could potentially be a lot more fun. I don't think I would have thought of that on my own either. I'm glad you weighed in about that. Green Jester, it's unrelated to the respecing thing. Let me go back to rejection, which is an interesting idea as a get off me move for this build. But yeah, I think the respecing thing is a big topic on these streams in general, of course, as it often applies to me and the things I'm doing. But I also generally think it's an under-discussed topic, and that a lot of games that exist have a lot of fun locked up in. The game just won't let you change your decisions. And I believe that it's not really a matter of whether the game is about you changing your decisions, and is usually more that the game just hasn't really made a choice about exactly how much it's about that. Again, I kind of hinted at this before, but I suspect that a lot of the underlying reason that was wrong, I'm dead now, okay? There's a place you could get off earlier on the elevator. I suspect the reason that a lot of games haven't done this more is just that they have decided that respeccing is boring. Like, the game is when you're fighting and not when you're in the menus. But why? Like, I don't think that's actually how that many humans feel. So why is it this attitude of being allergic to being in the menus? I do, it's the 21st century, so I can't help but say something like, some executive somewhere has said, oh, if the game is about thinking about the game, then players will spend a lot of time in menus. And then when people see people streaming the game on social media, they'll think the game is boring because it has making builds, which is boring. And I don't respect people who play video games, and so I'm gonna assume that people will think anything that involves thought is boring in a game. And I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, of course, yes, a bit cynical about that. But I have a feeling that in some cases it has to do with people feeling like it will look bad or something if the player is in the menus a lot. And I just like, okay, but if you wanted to make money, you could have done something more efficient. Like, how about some games are about the game being fun? And that doesn't always mean respecking, but sometimes it will. I'm not surprised, and I'm sure that you all will have more good thoughts about this. I'm quite tilted about this subject, if you can't tell. We're still completely relaxed from earlier in the stream. Nope, can't be while talking about this topic. And so I'm happy that you all are weighing in. Ragnavar, you said, I think it's more from the perspective of the player character progression being tied to narrative progress, and just as you can't undo progressing the narrative, at least without save scumming, the player's build, reflecting how the player grows their skills, can't just be undone if you didn't like the consequences to your choices. Still, there's very much putting ludonarrative higher up, which is valued by the experience, and games with respecking is something I often enjoy when present. So I'm glad you said that, Ragnavar. I think that makes sense, but is an oversimplification of the situation. So the part that was an aha moment for me is where you said, just as you can't undo progressing the narrative, at least without save scumming, you sometimes can, but that's not part of the intended experience. Okay. The player's build, this is the key part, reflecting how the character grows their skills, can't just be undone if you didn't like the consequences to your choices. Okay, but the character's build can represent something other than how the player has grown and what choices they've committed to. It's okay for it to not represent that. It's good when it does. That's an interesting way to do game design. But what I take issue with is this idea that there is no sensible use of character progression other than it representing how your character has grown. I just don't think that makes sense. That's leaving a lot of potential fun on the table to say that it's like wrong to think of it as something else. And I don't think it has to be just a narrative trade-off. A simple example would be something like Genshin Impact, where the Traveler, your player character, gains the ability to use other elements as they explore the world. Holy moly, that did a lot of damage. Okay, yes. Not sure what happened there. Roar Talisman acquired. Good work. Okay. Let's just see you later. I don't really know what happened. Sort of maybe he was trying to jump or something. Like, what happened? I don't know. Anyway, the narrative can be about the player gaining versatility, not about the character simply getting more powerful. And so I don't think it has to be that when you allow respeccing in a game, you are inherently putting ludonarrative lower in the priority than like the player's, experience of operating the game. I think that's a good point, Ragnavar, but I just, my issue is that I feel like if that's the problem, there is a way to have both. And I feel like a pressure where people are not trying to have both, I guess, is the complaint I have. That's how it feels to me. Anyway, you said, I don't think that devs think it's bad or dumb or boring to respec or exploring the options they put in the game, but that they don't value it over the often touted idea of choices are meaningful and have consequences. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Ragnavar. Well put. I think I'm purposely dying here so my rune reset thing isn't down there. And I guess that's the thing I take issue with. I feel like I do think some developers think it like it's bad to respec. Like we should avoid the player being in the build screen. And if no developer has ever thought that, I just want to say that I think the way people behave really makes it seem like they think that way. But I think you're mostly right. I think that I was saying I'm very tilted about this subject because it bothers me that it's neglected. I guess my point is just that I feel like a lot of developers don't seem to put any value on it. When you say they don't value it over the often touted idea of choices are meaningful, I feel people put almost infinite value on your choices are meaningful and have consequences without confirming that it actually provides fun for the player. They just say if it feels vaguely like the mood board idea of your choices have consequences is fulfilled, if while writing this piece of game design I look at a word that says a poster that says choices have consequences and it feels right, then that's good. And somehow people feel you don't have to prove that that's beneficial. However, making a build decision has infinite negative value, and no matter how much you demonstrate its benefits, people don't give it any weight. And that's how I feel about the subject. That it's not so much that people, if they thought about it, would say that respeccing is bad. I guess maybe they wouldn't. But just that people behave as if immersion has infinite value even when it isn't clear what value it has. And respeccing has no clear value, even though it's extremely easy to explain what value respeccing has. And that frustrates me a lot. It's sort of as if the game design industry, no one has heard a talk at GDC about respeccing, so they don't care about putting that in their games, because until they've heard that, it's not proven what the value of it is. And I just like that, no, that's not true. Like, it's really easy to list tons of advantages of letting the player respec, and actually kind of hard to list the advantages of letting the player, having the players stick with their choices. There are advantages to that, in my opinion. And I could tell you what some of those are, but I'm a little frustrated of how often I hear that and nobody is willing to like demonstrate what they feel like the benefits of that limitation are. There are benefits to it, in my opinion. I'm not saying that it's silly to want immersion, but I do feel like that is often cart before the horse. You know, people sort of just say, oh yeah, you know, that's well accepted to be a thing that's valuable, so we don't need to explain why it's useful. And like you do in my book, if you want the game to be fun, you do. And I just want that treatment for everything. Again, to me, in a way, if it was just me hanging out by myself, this is all easy. As long as you always have to explain your good reason for doing something before you put it in the game will be good. You might not be able to make some games for which there are good reasons to do something, but you can't yet explain what they are, sure. But if you have to have a good reason in hand to put something in the game design, you will make good games. The difficulty is just that we're in an industry where we're starting from that basically never happening, is the way I feel. And so, yes, I thought that was well put, that it's not so much that people like consciously think it's bad, it's that they value the alternative very highly. That's my less salty rewording. I'm trying to say it more the way you're saying it rather than putting my salty words in your mouth, Ragnarvar. Putting my salty words in your mouth. Wow, take me out to dinner first. Yeah. And again, that I did also make the side point before that you can make the player respeccing be part of the Ludo narrative. You don't have to make it be that respeccing is a break in immersion. You can very easily have a game where respeccing is part of the fantasy, which is what Cyberpunk 2077 is. Ragnavar, you said, I agree with you when it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, for example. That setting is all about the dehumanizing aspect of capitalism and technology towards the human body, even extending to the mind, and there's in-universe respecs. So it doesn't make sense to disallow respeccing within the gameplay, but not every game has a setting that can contain such a reasoning to allow build respeccing, and a developer shouldn't feel forced to add one in any way, narrative cohesion be damned. Well, they're not being forced to add one, I'm being forced to never have one. It's not that they're being forced. There's no need to provide equity for developers in this case. Almost nobody will ever add in good build systems currently. So I think it's completely fine to push hard in favor of having them, knowing that 99% of developers will ignore me. But I hear you, absolutely. Like, in a platonic meditation plane world where this is done the amount it's beneficial, I don't want anyone to feel like they should make their game about making builds, let alone respeccing. In fact, please don't make a bunch of games about making builds. It's bad. It's really annoying when a game has a kind of half-baked build system in the way, let alone respeccing. And sometimes respeccing, I feel like this is such a comparatively minor problem as to be silly, but it does exist. Sometimes games having respeccing is used as a kind of excuse so that a problem in the game is forgiven where it would be a lot better if they just fixed it. Like there's a boss that really heavily punishes a build archetype, and that's kind of just stupid and unbalanced. But the developers or the players will say, oh, but you can respec to avoid that boss. And it's like, that's still bad game design. Like, that's not good. Unless the game is about that, I guess, but I've very rarely seen that. I don't think a ton of games should have build systems or respeccing in them, but currently almost no games have those things in them in a way that feels integrated into the game. And at the same time, I would also say that there is a further problem here that I don't have a good solution for, which is that Cyberpunk 2077 is a setting that on paper you would be able to respec. Does that then mean that we're saying that if you want to make something in this setting where the player cannot respec, you can't do that because it doesn't fit the setting? Now, my response on the surface would be, no, of course not. It's extremely easy to make up any solution to say, in this narrative, you can't respec for some reason. For example, in Cyberpunk 2077, they could have part of the plot where they say, oh, the biochip that happens to you, without spoilers, the biochip means that you can't freely change your cyberware or like stats. You can change your cyberware, but you can't change your underlying stats because it risks like making your personality deteriorate faster due to the biochip. You can very easily make up an in-world justification for why you could or couldn't respec in almost any conceivable story. It could literally be something as simple as your player character doesn't want to. It could be anything. You can always do that. So personally, I feel like it's never really an excuse to say, oh, in this setting, you should be able to respec, therefore, why isn't there respeccing? My point about Cyberpunk is more that if you're going to have a default assumption, the default assumption would be that you can respec. And my argument is really there that the game supports respeccing. You get items in Cyberpunk that make sense in a game design where you could respec, that require certain stat requirements and stuff. Things that you might build a build around, but you would need to build a build around to be able to likely use. But you cannot build a build around them without knowing about them beforehand. That's the core of the argument. I was just pointing out that it is a little weird that the default of our industry is usually taken to an extreme. Basically, every game does it, regardless of whether the game setting fits that or not. I'm not trying to say that I think games should be required to do the game design that straightforwardly synergizes with their setting. That it's easy to avoid that problem, in my opinion. The issue is more with the idea that games just default to doing it the same way every time, regardless of whether that fits their setting or design goals. Not that it is bad to do it one way or the other, even within a setting where one of them is obvious or not. We wouldn't be talking about that if any games did this, basically, is my point. It's only the fact that basically 0 games exist which take a flexible approach to this subject, and pretty much all of them are in favor of like immersion is king. And we don't think about a way to add respeccing into that. But if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't even be having a conversation about this. I don't think it's bad for some games to, not include that. Because again, you as an individual, I'm happy for people to say, oh, well, I just want more respeccing because I like it. I am making the effort as a creator to say, I want it to be a game design focused argument. Like, I think it is demonstrable that more games it would be better for the game design. It fits the game better. It makes more sense. In the abstract, not for me specifically, not for my taste specifically, for the game to have more respeccing. But it's a more common perspective that people will just say, I like this or don't, and so I want this or not, and that's obviously fine. Man, I've been dying to level 1 enemies this whole stream. We should maybe just cut this out of the series. I feel like this series of streams is going really badly. Let's change topics and talk about that and see what people think about that. And the reason is that I feel like what I've learned from doing these streams is that this isn't what we do on this stream. Like, we can just hang out and talk and have fun playing through the game in the background. But having the focus be that we, like, that you're experiencing the game as you go just isn't a thing I do as a creator. I don't want to do that. I want to talk about this interesting subject we're talking about. I don't really want to focus primarily on playing the game while I'm streaming with you all. It's fun to have it as something that's building in the background, and maybe people like that mix of stuff. That's why I'm saying this. I'm not saying it because, oh, it's my stream and I say it's bad, therefore we're not doing it. Like, I don't care. I'm saying I'm biased and don't know if it's something people would like. If you all like the stream being the way it is so far, I want to know that. I just cannot dodge a single attack from this enemy to save my life. Hold on. But I don't know. I worry that if it's presented as like, oh, see the game like this, like, then it's bad. But I guess who really needs that? I don't know. What do you think? I'm still in a place where I'm like learning what the openings are to spellcast, so that's why I'm derping around from this enemy. Like, if you view the stream as just, oh, you get to follow along with this playthrough, and in the meanwhile, there's like interesting tangents, and they're not really tangents, it's basically just the stream, then that's good. I guess we're doing that really well. But it's become clear to me that the stream is nothing but that. You know, there's not a whole lot of focus on getting to, like, play the game. And I would imagine that people who've been watching my streams like this, because it's pretty similar to, I mostly like it, for what it's worth, because it's mostly similar to what we were doing before. It's just with more of a targeted goal in mind for the streams. So maybe it's good, but it's good at that. But I think it's more of a question about whether anybody wants that, I guess, which is what the Bootleg Build stream is for, is that I think I would have fun doing this, and some people would like it. So let's just do it and see if a lot of people like it, and then if they don't, it's fine. So I guess it doesn't matter. I don't know. It was on my mind, and I thought, since this is kind of a checkpoint in the playthrough, we should say, how are we doing? Is this cool? I'm mostly enjoying it, but I've had a pretty bad personal life for the past few months too, so I admit that this is a really bad time to be starting this, but I decided I just needed to kick myself out the window and do it. So that sort of irks me as well. Like, it's just like slightly imperfect in all these niggling little ways that I doubt anybody really cares about except for me, but it bothers me. But it doesn't really matter, and ultimately pushing myself out the window like this, or whatever I said, means I'm learning to do it better sooner. Are you kidding? No. What are you doing to me? Club him to death. Okay. Yeah, like, having only the breath spells as status is not fun. Like, we definitely need to get, what's it called? Swarm of Flies soon, ASAP. Not that I literally only have this spell, but that's getting really annoying. Asymptomatic, you said there are two primary wavelengths I can choose to engage with, the game and the discussion if it differs from the game. Elden Ring being the poisson du jour means I focus on the latter, on the discussion, but I do still engage with the game part within this 4x3 window. Sure, yeah, and I mean, for a lot of people, I know the value of this will be Elden Ring is kind of a tricky one, in my opinion, if you like making builds. I feel like overall, I consider this to be a pretty exciting game if you would enjoy making a variety of builds. But if you follow these streams and watch me partly because you get a lot of discussion about that kind of thing, I feel like this is a slightly shaky value proposition. Like, it's leaning toward good, but and I had a very good time, but people don't only care about builds, you know, it's going to be individual. And there are a lot of speed bumps. I don't know. I mean, and this is true of gaming in general, I guess. And I just have a low tolerance for these things, but that has been on my mind a lot. You know, we've talked about separately about the subject of, like, I need to be able to play the game well enough that it's not just like insufferable to watch as well, which is not really happening today. But in general, I feel like I can if in a good state of mind. But that's in my notes to do. I guess this time next week, what we'll do is I'll just try to focus on actually playing as much as possible, as actively as possible, while we discuss, and see if I can actually do that, to be blunt. And if I can't, then that's fine. We'll just live with it. But that inquiring minds want to know. You know, I need to know that. Be safe, asymptomatic. Yeah, if you live in the same part of the world as me at all, like the eastern United States, the weather's been pretty crazy. So please drive safely. Is this keep where you go here? Yeah. Yeah. Right, where you said, I wonder if it would be easier to use the stream as footage, but record what you'd want for a video separately and make a truncated version for the series you had in mind. No, because I wanted to get the atmospheric side here, and I'm trying to do off the cuff, just like I talk about a build I made videos as well. That will also be a thing on offer on bootleg builds, a little bit like some I've already got, which, okay, just every single time. On bootleg builds, there are these like 20-minute off-the-cuff build videos that are just what I like, a build I'm excited about, and I will be doing a lot more of those. I've been dragging my feet with that again. Honestly, this entire year has been a complete disaster for me in my personal life, but it is ending, so, or I'm getting it in order. It's not really ending. I ended it by starts talking, nearly immediately dies. Yep, classic. Classic. I mean, I'm not, to be fair, also, like, I'm trying to bypass enemies because I'm just sort of trying to get this done, which is always a losing strategy in Elden Ring. Like, it's expected you'll die if you do that. I would never get annoyed about dying while behaving like this. Like that, of course you're gonna get killed if you do this. That's, you know, that doesn't increase salt. It just increases sweat. The delicious, delicious sweat. Yeah. Just gotta remember they follow you. Extremely engaging, completely dark hallway gameplay. Is this the wrong keep? This is the wrong keep. And I know where the right keep is now that we've gone here. Wonder where this goes. Oh, sure. We kind of have to be here too, so let's quickly get the waypoint here. This is where you do the Radon Festival, but I do not know if we've activated the Radon Festival, and I want to know that because there's an item on the list where it matters. So let's go check. And it's pretty easy to do that. We just hoop, hoop, and we boop. Okay, here we are. One of my paddles is misbehaving, so I can't double jump very easily. That's why my movement looks a little weird all of a sudden. But there we go. It's working again. Okay. That doesn't open. It's a ladder, which is over there. And I also need this. Oh, come on. I guess it's easy to get with another one, right? That doesn't hit from that range? That's sad. Aw, give me that. No. Ugh. Alright, we gotta come back. Isn't that Flame Strike, or that one really good Ash of War? Wouldn't the main gate be open if you had the quest flags for the festival? I just don't remember. I think that's right. And therefore, if it's closed, the festival is not on yet. So how this works is when you get to a certain point in progression, this throws a combat festival, because General Radon is here. And you're meant to go on like a little raid with a bunch of other NPCs to kill him, try to kill him for glory. And I think that this being the way it is means that that has not happened yet, which is good, because then we can get the item I want, where we'd have to wait. which is a big deal. Yes, Ragnavar, the item is the wet knife. The reason we're here is because there is an item you can get here which allows you to give arbitrary weapons faith scaling, while also giving them fire or holy damage, and that's really, really good for this build. So I'm trying to get it, but I don't really remember where it is, and I'm complete and utter garbage at playing this game today, so not sure that's gonna go that well. My notes say that we want that waypoint. There's a site of grace that's like, okay, it's a shortcut just in case I die. Yoink. And from the waypoint, I have instructions written down on how to get there. See if I live that long. Hey, buddy. Don't shoot an explosive bolt at me, thank you. Lions. Oh, please, when you die. Fair enough, fair enough. Fair play. I've been doing all kinds of bad today, so fair enough. I just don't... And I'm just terrible at this in Elden Ring, but like, I can never find anything in this game. Like, I never, ever, ever do not get lost going somewhere. And so saying that was actually better than average. This is where I wanted to be. It's fine. That's fine. It's okay. It's fine. Just, yep, just push your feelings down. It's fine. Chug, chug, chug. And here it is. Okay, from this side of grace. Good. No. Those two guys in the background. There we go. Okay. Exit toward flamethrowers. Okay, back that way. Turn right to another flamethrower. Pass those toward a tower with an abductor version in the tower. All right. These guys turn right to a guy with another flamethrower, which is this guy. Pass him to a tower with an abductor version. Okay, maybe that abductor version, and then it'll be in here. Hey, sure, it worked out. Beautiful. Nope, not doing that. See you. I have an unupgraded club and no other weapons, but that's all about to change. I'm about to have an unupgraded club and no other weapons that scales with faith. That's it. That's the only thing we've achieved. I actually am dumb enough to just jump off this, and I survived every single time, folks. Every single time. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's about par for the course. But we got what we. Who cares? Who cares? We got what we need. It's fine. Bleh. Well done. Okay. Bookmark that. Yeah, that's really good. So, for example, we can now go here and put on the flame art affinity, which will give the club scaling with faith instead of strength and dex or whatever. It also gives you fire affinity, but that's like physical scaling but fire damage. This is some fire damage but also faith scaling. Again, it's still just a club, but the point is you get the idea. Yeah, and the big thing, exactly, Ragnavar, is that for faith as a stat, the wet knife that lets you basically just make anything scale with your key stat is available early in theory. You could, as you all saw, basically just run here at the beginning of the game. It would just take kind of a while, but it's fine. Whereas there, for example, the arcane one, I believe you need to clear the Radon Festival and then go into Noxtella or Nokron, I forget which, and that takes longer. You know, that's not necessarily that late in the game, but it does take longer. So we're just gonna run through here. Barry Aries, the club sings way faster than you remember. It's funny. Apparently, the wiki says the club actually has a slightly slower swing speed or animation speed than the other. weapons in its class, but it's just so small and doesn't do anything that, right, it feels fast, right? Every time I use the club, the good old reliable club, right? I always think, this is kind of nice. Like, it's sort of good. It's not really, but it feels better than you'd think it would, right? I can completely relate to that. Okay, well, this was a chaotic day. Let's end by killing a dragon and getting Grail's Roar, and then we'll just lament. Flame Art Club, ready for battle. We got hella incantations that hit a wide area, so I don't have to aim that much at the dragon. Let's just kill her off, and then we're good to go. Honestly, if you can make progress playing Elden Ring the way I've been playing this stream, anybody can. That's not true. Lots of people still won't be able to do this, but... that was worth shockingly few runes. Wow. Okay, holy shit. Glad I didn't go in there. I've actually never seen that before. Usually I kill these that just run by, or I just hurt them a little bit. Didn't know that happened. And it's an Arteria leaf. Where's the dragon? Please? Here, maybe? Yeah. That's what they would do. And it's even the appropriate Agil. Let's actually try to play the game for 2 seconds. And win. Big hecking damage. Yeehaw. Haven't really dodged that attack before, and I failed, as you would expect. Yep. That's fine, though. Do you have Scarlet Rot, my guy? Are you immune to Scarlet Rot? Let's try one more time. It's fine. Gonna go with immune. We're still doing okay damage, though. Not gonna test my luck with fire. That seems kind of dumb. Oh, we did actually get Scarlet Rot off. Good. Pretty much just dead, but we'll finish him off with Dragon Ice. Easy peas. Easy peas. One Dragon Heart, please. Thank you. You've been a great guy. And I mean, but this build, this is like the one strength of this build, right? This is the only thing you'd expect this build to be good at this stage, without some way to make casting more consistent. So again, having Grail's Roar, we at least have a get off me move, and then as Green Jester suggested earlier, I think Rejection is worth including. I don't know where you get that, but that should be easy to add. I'll add that to the list. Needs, deeds, which I'll add later, but that's a good idea. Some kind of just get off me move. A Rejection is like that thing in Guilty Gear Strive where you do a burst and it just the Roman cancel. Is it like that? Where you just kind of and stop time for a sec. We actually need 2 Dragon Hearts, so that was not good enough. I guess here. I don't know. The concern with Rejection is that I do not remember where in the game that's from. I think it's from later in the game, and therefore isn't a particularly good fit now, but I still feel like that's a good recommendation. I just don't know exactly where in the game that is from. And again, you wouldn't need this kind of spell if you were playing a normal Dragon Incantation playthrough. The only reason I'm looking for things like this is because I'm specifically trying to use a lot of status incantations, just for fun, just because I think it would be enjoyable to lean into that for a playthrough. If you were if you were playing a normal playthrough, Dragonclaw is the obvious thing to use, but I was leaning into that so heavily I thought it would be more fun to do something else. You can buy rejection from the cleric man in the round table. Really? That's a great fit then. Let's go get that. Because I'd use it pretty much right now. Any dragons that don't do as much damage as this? Because it'd be kind of nice to get another dragon heart without having to do this. Lernia, we could do Smarag, right? The dragon outside of Lernia, Rhea Lucaria. That might be fine. He has a lot of health, but I feel like doesn't hit that hard. Thank you. Give me spells. I do. Please give me Booty Blast. Good. Thank you. Yeah, let's go kill Smarag. I think that makes the most sense. Which is like here, I think. And we got the medallion, so. Should be pretty smooth. Oh yeah, let's look at rejection, by the way. The quick version is like this. So it's just a little boop. Rejection is the very small baby force spell. Wrath of Gold is the cool one that hurts. Yes, that's, I think I was thinking of Wrath of Gold is the one that I had the sense was later in the game. Yeah, it's small, but again, I feel like this is a lot of merit for a build like this. You just want something that lets you shove enemies off a little bit. And unlike Dragonclaw, I don't think this is going to be a thing that will feel overbearing because it's not that good at like damage, for example, at least as far as I'm familiar. It's not this universe destroying thing. It's just a quick like shoo. It comes out faster than Dragonclaw as well, though Dragonclaw has super armor, so sometimes it doesn't matter. But if you just want enemies to shoo off for a sec, I feel like it's going to be a good fit, and it will not be too overbearing of a tool. Not quite on the rot. That didn't quite get him either, which is bad because we're gonna run out of juice. Oh my goodness. That's fine, it's worth it. 100% worth it. We're absolutely just cheesing this boss by using statuses, but what else did you think we were going to do in this game? In this playthrough. I'm going to try to get poison off, and then we're pretty much just going to hit and run for like a while until he dies. Just making sure I get poison because I feel like I don't have that yet. And summon the skellies. Try to remember the timing to dodge this attack. Good, he shot it at the skeletons. Classic. Let's go for Dragon Ice to do more damage. Okay. And just like that, we're pretty much dead because I don't have any mana. There's the dragon up near Garank Bestial Sanctum on the bridge if you haven't killed that one already, but I'm pretty sure that has just as much damage and health as the ones in Dragon Barrow West. So I don't think that's going to make me better off. And again, we could kill those. I just feel like it will be tedious. Maybe compared to this, it won't be. Whoops. Okay. We still have a lot of health flasks. That's fine. Whereas Smarag, even though it seems like a legendary dragon, very imposing, I think actually has significantly less health. I'm not sure that's actually true, but it feels like it does. Pretty sure we can just kill it by throwing a lot of machetes. Or kukris, whatever these guys are. Not same difference. Those are not the same thing. Yeah. A true Elden Lord brings 15 kukris to every fight. So that's not wrong, in my opinion. Just like they did in the old times. Are you doing this to me, Elden Ring? What have you done? Why are you like this? Pretty sure he zoned out. Yeah. So that's gonna grind your gears a little. There's a site of grace over here. Let's get that before we continue. And by before we continue, I mean I'm not doing this today. Let's just climb the lift and we'll call it. Asymptomatic, you said, instead of the roads were so bad I was hydroplaning, consider I got a free undercarriage car wash by leaving work at the right time. Ah yes, hydroplaning. My favorite way to get to work. I hope you had a safe drive. I don't mean to joke about that too lightly. It's dangerous. Yeah, let's just go with the lift. This stream is sort of a mess. I'll try to tag it in a useful way as much as possible. But you can see, I feel like to some extent what's happening in this stream is you can see if we're going to settle in and have fun with this playthrough, I actually need to do a little more, I think. And the Dragonclaw thing is at least a little bit more of what is the thing that this stream is trying to be about. Like we've sort of done that a little more. But finding incantations that sort of give the me a kit as such is going to be important. Now, one other thing that is available now that will help is there are some weapons in Elden Ring that when you have them in your inventory, you get mana back whenever you get a kill. You get FP when you get a kill. This is extremely useful, as you can imagine. It means that we can use spells to fight stuff and, you know, use your weapon against the basic enemies, but be able to use magic and not just constantly run out of mana until you have like 10 flasks. And that, I think, makes a big difference. There's one of those available pretty early, so that's quite high on the list for next time, is to get the sacrificial axe, is the weapon I'm talking about. And there are others that maybe we should step on getting. But for now, we kind of got through the early game. Again, we got to sort of an early checkpoint, which I think is great. We got the red hot whetstones. We can give weapons faith scaling, which is great. And we're at Altus. Also okay. The immediate thing of value to do here, once I get a waypoint too, is to just run to early Mount Gelmir and get Golden Vow, so we at least have some buffs on the build. But it's not super urgent because it's not going to solve our fundamental problems, which are having things to do in combat without losing all my mana instantly, basically. The Dragon Breath spells are really strong, but there's just not enough. And so we'll figure it out from there. So a little bit of a shorter one, a little bit of a chaotic one, but overall, I would say relaxing went very well. It is a level of zen that you achieve to go, this stream is bad, question mark, exclamation point. And then the audience goes, it's sort of bad, but like, I'm enjoying this part of it. Good talk. Yeah. Same, I guess. It's fine, you know. And I mean, sort of the purpose of this is an experiment anyway. So I think the big problem that you're seeing here is if you've been wondering, you have so many clear thoughts about what you want to do with your work, Zandy, and you have 3 different YouTube channels with very clear ideas on them. Why are you having such difficulty making videos? This is why. Because I feel deeply uncomfortable with the idea of making something so ugly and warty and incomplete and not sure what it is. But that is the way that you find out what you want to do. Let it ever be said that if my career falls into garbage and ceases to exist, I was able to do it, okay? I will make an ugly thing and not know what I'm doing and put myself out there in such as it is and try to figure out what is happening. But I obviously I don't like it. If I didn't have that problem, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have a financially lucrative but creatively hollow YouTube career instead of a creatively pretty interesting, if we can get it going, but basically non-existent financially YouTube career, which is what I have. I don't know if this is the order it makes sense to do these things in, but that's the kind of person I am right now. So in the effort to make a cold fusion where I'm motivated, but also like do think about the things I do without having analysis paralysis, this is where we are. I will put myself out there and feel bad about it because it's necessary, and try not to feel bad about it. Thanks for chilling. I feel like the voice we're using is more like exclamation point question mark. Is that more appropriate? Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this, love to have you back sometime. And if you're watching the streams live, you can post something for Archive Parlay that I'll answer this time next week here. So if there was anything we didn't get to today, I think we got to most of it in this case. But if anything comes to mind or there's something you'd like to hear about during the next one of these this time next week on Thursdays, I would love to have that. So put it in that form. And I'm glad you got home safe, asymptomatic. That sounds like the roads are bad. I thankfully am not driving anywhere. Partly thanks to you folks. See you in the next one.